A veteran Navy SEAL arrived at a quiet cabin deep in the northern forest, expecting nothing more than silence. But the moment he stepped out of his truck, a German shepherd ran straight toward him. No barking, no hesitation, just certainty, like the dog had been waiting for him. It didn't go inside the house. It turned toward the forest instead. And for some reason, the man felt like he was being called, pulled into something he didn't understand. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just a coincidence. Where are you watching from today? Like and subscribe to Veteran Dog Stories to follow the journey. The road into Iron Hollow had no signs, no fences, and no reason to exist. At least not one that Caleb Rowan trusted. It stretched ahead in a thin line of dust and pale stone, cutting through the northern forest like a scar that time had forgotten to heal. Sunlight filtered through tall pines, falling in long golden beams across the hood of his truck. It was the kind of place people drove past without noticing, and the kind of place men like Caleb came to disappear. Caleb Rowan was 43, built like a man who had never truly left the battlefield. He stood tall, just over 6 feet, broad-shouldered, his body still carrying the hard lines of Special Forces training. His face was angular, jaw set with quiet tension, light stubble shadowing his cheeks like something he never quite bothered to finish. His eyes, blue-gray, held a stillness that didn't come from peace, but from endurance. The kind of stillness that followed years of noise. His dark brown hair was cut short, military style, with early strands of silver creeping in at the temples. He wore the same outfit he always did. An olive field jacket weathered at the seams, a red and dark blue plaid shirt beneath it, dark cargo pants, and worn brown leather boots that had seen more ground than most men ever would. A battered military watch clung to his wrist. A folding knife rested in his pocket, and on the passenger seat beside him sat his Eberly stock half-track backpack, his only constant. He killed the engine. Silence followed. Not the peaceful kind. Not the kind that settled. This silence waited. Caleb stepped out of the truck, boots crunching lightly on gravel. The air smelled clean, pine, earth, sunlight. Too clean. Like a place untouched by the kind of things he carried inside him. Ahead, the cabin stood alone. It was smaller than he expected. A wooden structure tucked at the edge of a wide clearing, its roof sloping gently under the weight of time. The wood had faded, silvered by years of weather. But it hadn't collapsed. It endured. Just like everything else in this place. Caleb exhaled slowly. "This is it," he muttered under his breath. A house left behind by a man he had never met. A man who, according to a single letter, had decided Caleb Rowan was worth remembering. Caleb didn't believe in things like that. He reached into the truck, grabbed his backpack, and slung it over one shoulder. That was when he heard it. Not a sound exactly, a shift, a presence. He turned and saw the dog. It stood at the far edge of the clearing, where the grass met the shadow of the trees. A German shepherd, large, balanced, built with the kind of precision that didn't come from chance. Its coat was black and tan, short and dense, catching the sunlight in sharp contrasts. Muscles moved beneath its frame with quiet efficiency. Its stance was steady, alert, but not tense. Its eyes found him. Deep, focused, unblinking. The kind of gaze that didn't just see, it understood. Caleb didn't move. Neither did the dog. For a long second, they simply stood there. Two creatures measuring something neither of them had words for. Then, without warning, the dog ran. Not cautiously, not testing. It moved fast and direct, closing the distance between them with a certainty that struck something sharp inside Caleb's chest. He tensed instinctively, weight shifting, ready for anything. But the dog didn't lunge, didn't bark, didn't hesitate. It stopped just in front of him, close enough that Caleb could hear its breathing, steady, controlled. close enough that he could see the faint wear on the animal's coat, the small scars hidden beneath fur. This was no stray. This was a working dog. The dog stepped forward, lowered its head, and pressed its nose gently against Caleb's hand. Caleb froze. The contact was brief, deliberate. The dog inhaled, once, twice, and something changed. Not in the dog, in the air. Caleb felt it before he understood it. A shift, like recognition passing between them. The dog pulled back slightly, its eyes narrowing, studying him more closely now. Then its gaze dropped. To his jacket. Caleb followed its line of sight. The olive field jacket. Old, worn, and not originally his. It had belonged to his father, a man who had also worn silence like armor. Caleb swallowed. The dog stepped back, not retreating, assessing. Then it turned, just turned, and began walking toward the forest. No glance back, no signal, no command, just movement. Caleb stared after it, something tightening in his chest. "That's it?" he said quietly. "You just show up and walk away?" The dog didn't respond. Didn't need to. Caleb ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. He looked at the cabin, then at the forest, then back at the dog, already nearing the tree line. He felt it then. That pull. Not curiosity, not obligation. Something older, something he didn't trust. "I'm not doing this," Caleb muttered. His voice sounded smaller than he expected. The dog reached the edge of the trees and stopped. It didn't look back, not once. It simply stood there, facing into the forest, as if it already knew. Caleb would follow. Caleb stared at the animal's back, jaw tightening. "Damn it!" The word slipped out before he could stop it. Because he already knew the truth. He hated things he couldn't explain, and this was already too much. He shifted his weight, took a step forward, stopped. His hand clenched slightly. There was a time when he followed instincts like this without question, when hesitation meant death. But that time was supposed to be over. He had left that man behind. Hadn't he? The dog didn't move, didn't urge, didn't wait. It simply existed at the edge of something Caleb wasn't ready to name. And somehow, that was worse. Caleb exhaled slowly. "Just a look," he muttered. "That's it." He adjusted the strap of his backpack and walked. Each step felt heavier than it should. The ground shifted from gravel to grass, from grass to soft earth. The air cooled slightly as he neared the trees, the sunlight thinning into scattered fragments between branches. The forest wasn't dark, but it wasn't open either. It held things, sounds, smells, memory. The dog moved again, slipping between the trees with quiet ease. Caleb followed. Branches brushed against his jacket. The scent of pine deepened. Somewhere in the distance, a bird called once, then fell silent. They walked for several minutes. No path, no markers, just the dog and the direction it chose. Caleb's senses sharpened without permission. Every sound, every shift, every small detail. Old instincts waking up like something he had buried but never killed. "Great," he muttered under his breath. "Exactly what I needed." The dog slowed, then stopped. Caleb halted a few steps behind it. "What is it?" The dog didn't answer. Of course it didn't. It stood still, ears slightly forward, body balanced. Not tense, not relaxed. Ready. Caleb stepped closer, looked past it, and frowned. There was nothing there. Just trees, just earth, just light filtering through leaves. He glanced down at the dog. What am I supposed to be looking at? The dog didn't move, didn't blink. It simply held its position. Caleb felt that tension again, that quiet, insistent pressure, like standing on the edge of something invisible. He looked forward once more. This time, slower, careful, and then he saw it. Not clearly, not all at once, but enough. A subtle depression in the ground, a shift in the earth, a place where something had been disturbed, long ago or recently, he couldn't tell. Caleb crouched slightly, eyes narrowing. "Well," he murmured. "That's new." The dog finally moved. Just one step, positioning itself between Caleb and the spot, blocking him. Not aggressively, but deliberately. Caleb looked at it. The dog looked back, and for the first time since it had appeared, Caleb understood something. This wasn't random. This wasn't coincidence. And this dog wasn't asking. It was deciding. Caleb straightened slowly. A long breath left his chest. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I had a feeling." The forest didn't answer, but it listened. And somewhere in that silence, something had already begun. Caleb didn't follow the dog into the forest, not yet. The pull was still there, quiet, insistent. But he had spent too many years surviving by choosing when not to move. Instinct wasn't something you obeyed blindly. Not anymore. He stood at the edge of the clearing for a long moment, watching Rook disappear between the trees. Then he turned back. The cabin waited. It hadn't changed in the few minutes he'd been gone. But somehow, it felt different now. Less like a place abandoned, more like a place paused. Caleb stepped inside. The wooden floor creaked under his boots, a dry, hollow sound that echoed softly through the space. Dust hung in the air, drifting lazily through beams of sunlight that cut in from the windows. But it wasn't thick, not untouched. That was the first thing he noticed. Dust gathered in corners, along the edges of furniture, but not evenly. Some surfaces were cleaner, subtly disturbed. Caleb set his pack down by the wall. His eyes moved slowly, deliberately. Table, chairs, stove, everything in its place, but not everything untouched. He walked to the window. The frame had been repaired recently. The wood was newer, the nails brighter. Not yesterday, not fresh, but not years old either. "Someone's been coming back," he murmured. Not a guess, a conclusion. Behind him, Rook stepped into the cabin. The dog didn't linger near the door, didn't explore aimlessly. He moved with purpose, head low, body controlled, every step quiet and measured. His black and tan coat caught the light in sharp lines, muscles shifting under his frame like a machine built for precision. His eyes never stopped moving, scanning, reading the space the way Caleb once had in buildings that didn't want to be entered. Caleb watched him. That was the second thing he noticed. This wasn't a dog trying to find comfort. This was a dog continuing a job. "You're not lost," Caleb said quietly. Rook didn't look at him. Didn't need to. The dog moved past the table, toward the center of the room. Stopped. Then turned slightly, circling once. Caleb followed at a distance. His boots were louder than the dog's steps, heavier, less careful. The dog paused again, this time near the old stone fireplace. The hearth was cold, ash long settled, but the wood around it, different, worn, more than it should have been. Caleb's brow furrowed. "What is it?" he asked. Rook lowered his head, sniffed once, then again. Not frantic, focused. His nose hovered inches above the wooden floorboards. Caleb stepped closer, crouching slightly. "Yeah, I see it." He didn't. Not yet. But he trusted the pattern. He had learned that a long time ago, back when hesitation got people killed, and dogs saved them without asking for credit. He reached down, running his fingers across the floor. The wood felt solid. But something subtle, a difference in temperature, in resistance. Caleb pressed his palm flat, held it there, waited. And then, there, a faint hollow beneath. His jaw tightened slightly. "Well," he muttered. "That's not good." Rook shifted beside him, not impatient, expectant. Caleb leaned back on his heels, exhaling slowly. His gaze drifted across the room again. But now, everything looked different. Not random, arranged, intentional. His eyes landed on a shelf against the far wall. A few books, old, worn. He stood, walked over, and pulled one free. A journal, leather-bound, edges frayed. He flipped it open. The handwriting inside was tight, controlled, deliberate. A man who measured his words. A man who didn't waste them. Caleb read the first line. "People don't disappear in this forest. Not by accident." He stilled. Turned the page. More entries, short, direct. 3 hikers. Found one. The others, no trace. Weather was clear, no reason they should have been lost. Rook tracked something I couldn't. Not an animal, not a person. Something else. Caleb's eyes lifted slowly. To the dog. Rook remained by the fireplace, still focused, still working. Caleb looked back at the journal. His grip tightened slightly. There it was. The shift. This wasn't just about people getting lost. Something had changed, and whoever had lived here had seen it coming. Caleb closed the journal halfway, staring at the page without reading it. His mind moved, connecting, calculating. He had seen patterns like this before, things that didn't add up, things that looked like coincidence, until they weren't. He exhaled slowly. "You were tracking something," he murmured. "Something your handler didn't understand." Rook's ears flicked slightly. A small movement, but enough. Caleb glanced at the dog again. "And you're still tracking it." This time, Rook looked at him. Just for a second. Their eyes met. And in that brief moment, Caleb felt it. Not emotion, not exactly. Recognition. Rook lifted his paw, slowly, carefully, and pressed it against the floor, once, then held it there, not scratching, not digging, just marking the exact spot, as if saying, "This is where it starts." Caleb stared at the dog's paw, then at the floor beneath it. A long breath left his chest. "All right," he said quietly. "I hear you." He set the journal down on the table, rolling his shoulders slightly as tension crept into his frame. Old instincts, waking up. Not memories. Muscle. He crouched again, fingers tracing the edges of the floorboards, looking for seams, for anything out of place. It took a minute. Then 2. And then, there, a line, barely visible, running in a square. Caleb's lips pressed into a thin line. "Hidden door," he muttered. "Of course it is." He leaned closer, checking for a latch. Nothing obvious, no handle, no hinge. Just wood, seamless, intentional. He reached into his pocket, pulling out his folding knife. The metal glinted briefly in the sunlight as he flicked it open. "Let's see how bad this gets." He slid the blade into the seam, gently, tested the resistance, then applied pressure. The wood groaned faintly. Dust shifted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft click. Caleb froze. Not fear, focus. He adjusted his grip, then pulled upward. The panel resisted at first, then gave. Slowly, deliberately. The hatch lifted. A rush of cooler air rose from below, brushing against his face. Not stale. Not dead. Just hidden. Caleb set the panel aside carefully, then looked down. Darkness. Deep. A ladder descending into shadow. Metal rungs. Old, but stable. Caleb didn't move immediately. He just stared. A long, quiet moment stretching between what he knew and what he was about to confirm. Behind him, Rook stepped closer. The dog didn't push past him. Didn't descend. He simply stood at Caleb's side, gaze fixed on the opening. Waiting, not urging, not warning, just present. Caleb exhaled slowly. "I was supposed to leave," he said under his breath. The words sounded distant, unfamiliar, like they belonged to someone else. He glanced at the journal on the table, at the words written by a man who had stayed, then back at the darkness below. "Yeah," Caleb muttered. "Guess that's not happening." He shifted his weight forward, placed one boot on the first rung, tested it, solid. He tightened his grip on the edge of the hatch, then looked once more at the dog. Rook met his gaze, steady, unwavering. Caleb gave a small nod. Not to the dog, to himself. Then he began to descend. The light above him narrowed as he moved down, the world shrinking to the space between each rung, each breath, each controlled movement. And somewhere behind him, the life he thought he had left behind was already catching up. The ladder groaned under Caleb's weight as he descended, each step echoing softly into the darkness below. The air grew cooler the deeper he went, carrying a scent that didn't belong to the forest above. Metal, old oil, and something faintly sterile. Not decay. Preservation. His boots touched concrete. He paused at the bottom, letting his eyes adjust. The light from above barely reached him, fading into a bus gray that swallowed details at the edges. Caleb reached out, fingers brushing along the wall. Rough surface. Then, a switch. He hesitated for half a second, then flipped it. A weak flicker, a low hum, and the bunker came to life. The light wasn't strong, but it was enough. Caleb straightened slowly, scanning the room. It wasn't what most people would expect from a hidden space. Not a clean, organized bunker. Not military precision. This place had been built piece by piece. A steel table stood in the center, scratched and dented from years of use. Shelves lined the walls, some wooden, some metal, holding supplies that didn't match each other. Medical kits, ropes, water containers, old radios, tools that had seen too many repairs. Nothing uniform. Everything functional. "This wasn't planned," Caleb murmured. It was continued. He stepped forward, boots quiet against the concrete. On the far wall, maps were pinned up, layered over each other, edges curling with age. Handwritten notes filled the margins. Some markings were faded. Others looked fresh. Caleb leaned closer. Routes, coordinates, symbols he recognized, safe paths, danger zones. But there was something else, a pattern he couldn't fully place yet. Behind him, a soft sound. He turned. Rook had come down. The German shepherd moved differently here, slower, more deliberate. His black and tan coat caught the dim light, highlighting the tension in his muscles. His head stayed low, eyes scanning the space not out of fear, but recognition. This wasn't new to him. This was familiar ground. "Yeah," Caleb said quietly. "You've been here before." Rook didn't respond. He moved past Caleb toward the far corner of the room, stopped. Caleb followed. The corner looked ordinary at first glance. A hook on the wall, a jacket hanging from it. Old. Brown canvas, worn thin at the edges. But what caught Caleb's attention wasn't the jacket itself. It was the stains. Dark, dried, set deep into the fabric. Blood. Caleb's jaw tightened slightly. He reached out, fingers brushing the sleeve. The material was stiff where the blood had dried. Not fresh, but not ancient either. Weeks. Maybe a few months. This is where it ended, Caleb said quietly. Or maybe where it didn't. Rook stepped closer. Then slowly, he lowered himself to the ground, not resting, not relaxing. He lay beside the jacket, head down, eyes forward, still. Caleb felt something shift in his chest, not understanding. Something heavier, respect. The kind a soldier feels standing beside something that matters, even if he doesn't fully know why. Rook didn't move, didn't blink, didn't look at Caleb. He simply lay there beside the jacket, as if guarding not the object, but the moment it represented. Caleb swallowed slowly. "You stayed here," he said under his breath. Not asking, acknowledging. Rook's ears twitched faintly. That was enough. Caleb straightened, turning his attention back to the room. There had to be more. People didn't build places like this without leaving something behind. His eyes landed on a desk near the wall. Small, metal, covered in papers. He stepped over, picking up the top sheet. Notes, short, direct, times, locations. Caleb flipped through them quickly. Search patterns, coordinates, weather conditions. Then, he found it. A notebook. Different from the others, leather-bound. He opened it. The handwriting was tighter than the notes on the desk. More controlled, more personal. Caleb read. "The forest isn't the problem." He paused, turned the page. "Something is driving people off the trails." Another page. "Rook hears it before I do." Caleb's eyes flicked toward the dog, still unmoving, still guarding. He looked back at the notebook. It doesn't follow patterns. It creates them. Caleb exhaled slowly. This wasn't fear. Not the kind that made people run. This was observation. A man trying to understand something he couldn't control. Caleb turned another page. The writing changed. Less steady. More pressure in each line. "If anyone finds this, don't assume I got lost." Caleb's hand tightened slightly. "You didn't," he said quietly. He kept reading. "I chose to stay." A long pause, then, "Because if I don't, no one else will." Caleb closed the notebook halfway, staring at the page. That sentence settled into him like something he had heard before. Not in words, in action, in choices. He looked up again. At the maps, at the supplies, at the jacket. "This wasn't a mistake," he said. "It was a decision." Rook finally moved. He lifted his head, slowly, then stood. Not abruptly, not with urgency, but with purpose. He stepped away from the jacket, walked toward the center of the room, then stopped. Caleb watched him carefully. "What is it?" Rook turned his head slightly, looking toward something Caleb hadn't noticed yet. A radio, old, bulky, resting on a shelf near the wall. Caleb stepped closer. "Yeah," he murmured. "I saw it." He reached out, brushing dust from its surface. The casing was scratched, worn, but intact, connected. Wires ran from it into the wall, improvised, functional. Caleb checked the switches. Most were off. One was loose. He adjusted it slightly. Nothing. He leaned closer, examined the wiring. Then, his fingers brushed something near the base. A small lever. Hidden. He pushed it. The radio crackled. Sudden, sharp. Caleb froze. Static filled the room, uneven and broken. Then, a voice. Faint, barely there. "Anyone?" Caleb's pulse slowed instantly. "Focus. It." The signal cut, returned. Can hear. Caleb leaned in. Yeah, he said, voice low but steady. I hear you. Silence. Then static. Then nothing. The radio died again. The hum faded. The room returned to stillness. Caleb stayed there, unmoving, listening. But the voice didn't come back. Rook stepped closer, standing beside him now, not looking at the radio, looking at Caleb, waiting. Caleb exhaled slowly. That wasn't old, he said. That was recent. His eyes moved to the maps again, then to the notebook in his hand, then to the dog. You brought me here for a reason. Rook didn't react, but he didn't deny it either. Caleb nodded once, a small movement, but decisive. All right, he said quietly. We're not done. He picked up the notebook, slipped it into his jacket, then turned toward the ladder. Rook moved first this time, climbing quickly, disappearing into the light above. Caleb followed. Each step upward felt different than the ones before. Not uncertain, not hesitant, clear. He emerged into the cabin. The sunlight hit him, bright and real. For a moment he stood still, letting it settle. Then he stepped forward, into the room, into the silence, into whatever this was becoming. Behind him, Rook stood at his side, not leading, not following, just there. And for the first time since arriving, Caleb didn't feel like he was being pulled into something. He felt like he had already chosen. Morning came quietly to Iron Hollow, as if the forest itself didn't want to wake too fast. Light spilled through the trees in long, pale beams, touching the cabin roof, the clearing, the edge of the world Caleb had thought he would pass through without stopping. But he hadn't. And now the forest didn't feel like a place to pass through. It felt like something waiting to be understood. Caleb stepped out of the cabin, already dressed, already moving like a man who had made a decision during the night and didn't need to say it out loud. The olive jacket sat firm on his shoulders. His boots hit the ground with purpose. The half-track backpack was secured tightly, weight balanced the way only experience could teach. Rook stood near the edge of the clearing, watching the trees, not restless, not uncertain, ready. Caleb paused beside him, glancing down. All right, he said quietly. You lead. I'll follow. It wasn't surrender. It was trust. Rook moved immediately, no hesitation. He stepped into the forest, slipping between the trees with silent precision. Caleb followed close behind, adjusting his pace to match the dog's rhythm, controlled, efficient, alert. The forest closed around them. Sounds changed. The open stillness of the clearing gave way to something denser, layered. Wind through branches, the distant crack of wood, the quiet shift of unseen movement. Caleb's senses sharpened without effort, old instincts returning. Not as ghosts, but as tools. Rook didn't follow any visible trail, no worn path, no broken branches that a casual eye would notice. But Caleb began to see it, small details, marks carved lightly into tree bark, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. A strip of faded fabric tied low on a branch. A rock slightly out of place. Signals. Not for everyone. For those who knew how to read them. Search routes, Caleb murmured. Emergency markers. Rook didn't react, but he didn't slow either. They moved deeper. Minutes passed, then more. The light shifted above them, narrowing as the trees thickened. Caleb adjusted his breathing, his steps falling into rhythm with the forest. He didn't feel lost. Not yet. Then, a sound. Footsteps. Not theirs. Rook stopped instantly. So did Caleb. The dog's body changed, not tense but alert in a different way. Not danger, Recognition. A figure stepped out from between the trees ahead. A woman, mid-30s, lean build, strong but not bulky. She moved like someone used to uneven ground, weight shifting carefully with each step. Her moss-green ranger parka blended almost seamlessly with the forest around her. Beneath it, a gray knit sweater. Dark outdoor pants tucked into worn but well-maintained waterproof boots. Her hair, chestnut brown, was tied low at the back, loose strands framing a face sharpened by years of outdoor work. Her skin carried a light tan, touched by wind and sun. Her eyes, gray-brown, were steady, observant, missing nothing. She stopped when she saw them. Her gaze moved first to Caleb, then to Rook, and something flickered in her expression. Not fear, not surprise, recognition. "You're not from around here," she said. Her voice was calm, grounded. Caleb straightened slightly. "Just passing through," he replied. The woman's eyes narrowed a fraction. "No one passes through Iron Hollow," she said. Not confrontational, just factual. Her gaze returned to the dog. Rook stood still, watching her, not aggressive, but aware. "You found him," she added quietly. Caleb's brow tightened. "Found who?" "The dog," she said. She took a step closer. "Or maybe he found you." Caleb didn't answer, didn't need to. The woman exhaled softly. "Mara Bellamy," she said, extending a hand. "Forest Ranger." Caleb hesitated for half a second, then took it. "Caleb." Her grip was firm, confident. The kind of handshake that didn't need to prove anything. Mara glanced at Rook again. "I've seen him before," she said. "Not recently, but enough." Caleb studied her. "And?" Mara's expression shifted slightly. Something deeper. "I used to think I imagined it," she said. "When I was a kid, I got lost out here. Storm rolled in fast. I couldn't find my way back." She looked past them, into the trees. "I remember hearing something moving around me. Not loud, not close, just there." Her voice softened. "And then I found a path. Marked. Clear, like someone had just walked it." She looked at Rook again. "I didn't know who led me out." A pause. "But I remember the feeling." Caleb's chest tightened slightly. "What feeling?" Mara held his gaze. "That I wasn't alone." Silence settled between them. Not heavy, not uncomfortable. Just understood. Rook moved suddenly. Not forward, not away. He stepped to the side, stopped at a patch of ground, and began to dig. Not frantic, not desperate, controlled, deliberate, as if he already knew exactly what was buried there. Caleb and Mara exchanged a glance, then moved closer. The soil gave way quickly under Rook's paws, loose, disturbed before. Within seconds, something surfaced, leather, darkened with age. Rook stopped, stepped back. Caleb crouched, brushing dirt away with his hands. A collar, old, worn. A metal tag hung from it, scratched but still readable. Caleb turned it slightly, read the name, then froze. "What is it?" Mara asked. Caleb didn't answer immediately. His jaw tightened. "That's not possible," he said quietly. He held the tag up. Mara leaned closer. Her breath caught slightly. "That name." She didn't finish, didn't need to. Caleb stared at it. The engraving was faded, but still clear enough. A K-9 designation, a handler's unit, and a name. One that didn't belong to Rook. One that belonged to a dog. Long dead. Caleb exhaled slowly. "Different dog," he said. "Same system." He looked at Rook. The dog wasn't looking at them. He was looking at the collar. Still, focused. Mara swallowed slightly. "This isn't just rescue work," she said. "This is something that's been going on for years." Caleb nodded faintly. "Yeah." He stood, holding the collar loosely in his hand. Rook didn't move. Didn't push forward. Didn't leave. He simply stood there, as if guarding a memory that didn't belong to him alone. Caleb looked at the dog, then back at the forest, then at Mara. "This wasn't built by one man," he said. "No." Mara shook her head slowly. "It was carried." The wind shifted. Branches creaked softly overhead. The forest didn't feel empty anymore. It felt inhabited. Not by people, by purpose. Caleb slipped the collar into his jacket, carefully, like something that mattered. "All right," he said quietly. "We keep moving." Rook turned, immediately. No hesitation. And this time, Caleb followed without question. The forest narrowed as they moved deeper. Not physically. There was still space between the trees. But something about it pressed closer now. The air felt denser, the light thinner. Even the sound of their steps seemed quieter, as if the ground itself had learned how to listen. Rook led without hesitation. Caleb followed without question. And Mara, she stayed slightly behind and to the side, not out of fear, but instinct. The kind that came from years of reading terrain, of knowing when something unseen was shaping the path ahead. "Where is he taking us?" she asked quietly. Caleb didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on the dog. "He's not taking us anywhere," he said finally. "He's taking us back." Mara frowned slightly, but didn't argue, because she could feel it too. This wasn't a search. It was a return. They moved for another 10 minutes, maybe more. Time had a way of slipping in places like this, stretching or shrinking without warning. Then Rook slowed. Just a fraction, enough for Caleb to notice. "He's close," Caleb said. Mara's hand instinctively brushed the small radio clipped to her jacket, as if grounding herself in something familiar. Rook veered slightly off what little remained of the marked route, pushing through a cluster of low branches and stepping into a narrow depression in the terrain. At first it looked like nothing. Just a dip in the earth. Then Caleb saw it. A structure, partially hidden. Wood and metal, collapsed in places but not abandoned. A secondary bunker, smaller than the one beneath the cabin, rougher, more exposed. "This wasn't meant to be permanent," Caleb said quietly. "Fallback position," Mara added. Rook approached the entrance, stopped. His body shifted, not tense, not aggressive, but aware in a different way. Alive. Caleb stepped past him, crouching near the opening. The door wasn't fully closed. It hung slightly ajar, the hinges rusted but functional. Scratches marked the surface, recent. From inside, a faint sound drifted out. Not mechanical, not environmental, human. A breath, uneven. Caleb's expression hardened instantly. "Someone's in there." Mara moved closer, lowering her voice. "Alive?" Caleb listened. Another breath. Faint. But there. Barely. He pushed the door open slowly. It creaked, a long, tired sound. Then silence again. Caleb stepped inside. The bunker was dim, lit only by a narrow shaft of light cutting through a crack in the ceiling. Dust floated in the air, disturbed by movement. And in the far corner, a man, curled slightly against the wall. Still. Too still. Caleb moved quickly but carefully, crossing the space in a few strides. He crouched beside him. The man was older, early 60s maybe. Thin, almost gaunt, like time had been taking small pieces from him without asking. His face was lined deeply, not just from age, but from years of strain. Gray hair clung unevenly to his head, and a short, rough beard framed a jaw that looked like it hadn't held a full meal in days. His clothes told their own story. A faded brown canvas jacket, worn thin at the elbows. A flannel shirt beneath, stained and wrinkled. Work pants darkened with dirt. Boots cracked from use. But his hands were strong, calloused. A man who had worked, fought, held on. "Hey," Caleb said quietly, placing a hand on the man's shoulder. No response. Caleb leaned closer. "Hey, stay with me." A flicker. The man's eyelids trembled. Then slowly, they opened. His eyes were pale gray, clouded with exhaustion, but sharp underneath, alive. He looked at Caleb, then past him, to the entrance, to Rook, and something shifted. Recognition. "You," the man whispered. His voice was dry, barely more than air. "You came back." Caleb's brow tightened. "I think you've got the wrong—" The man shook his head weakly. "No," he rasped. "Not you." His eyes stayed on Rook. "The dog." Rook stepped forward, slow, careful. He approached the man and stopped just within reach. The man's hand lifted slightly, trembling, but Rook closed the distance, pressing gently into it. Not excitement, not relief. Something quieter, familiar. Mara stepped in behind Caleb, her expression shifting as she took in the scene. "Who is he?" she asked softly. The man exhaled a thin breath. "Jonah," he said. "Jonah Creed." Caleb glanced at Mara. Recognition flashed across her face. "You were listed in the missing reports," she said. Jonah gave a weak, humorless smile. "Yeah," he murmured. "That sounds about right." Caleb shifted slightly, checking the man's condition. Pulse, breathing, responsiveness. "You've been down here long?" he asked. Jonah's eyes flickered. "Long enough," he said. Then, after a pause, "Too long to pretend it was temporary." Caleb nodded faintly. "That jacket upstairs," he said. "That yours?" Jonah's gaze moved, not to Caleb, to Rook. "No," he whispered. "That was his." Caleb's chest tightened. "The owner of the cabin?" Jonah swallowed slowly. "Your uncle." Silence filled the bunker. Not empty, heavy. Mara stepped closer, crouching on the other side. "What happened to him?" she asked. Jonah didn't answer right away. His hand rested against Rook's fur, fingers barely moving. "He stayed," Jonah said finally. Caleb's jaw tightened. "Stayed for what?" Jonah's eyes shifted to him, and for the first time, they were fully present. "Because someone had to," he said. Jonah's voice dropped lower, not weaker, deeper. "He didn't wait for you to come back." His eyes held Caleb's, sharp now, certain. "He believed you would." Caleb felt something break. Not outwardly, not visibly, but inside, something that had been held too tight for too long. "That doesn't make sense," Caleb said quietly. Jonah gave a faint, tired breath. "It didn't to me either," he said. "Not at first." He shifted slightly, wincing. Mara reached for her pack, pulling out a water bottle. "Easy," she said gently, helping him take a small sip. Jonah nodded faintly in thanks, then looked back at Caleb. "He knew about you," Jonah said. Caleb's brow furrowed. "How?" "Watched from a distance," Jonah replied. "Your father, your service, what came after?" Caleb's hands tightened slightly. "That's not possible." Jonah gave a faint smile. He was better at finding people than they were at staying hidden. A pause, then. "He said you'd come when it mattered." Caleb shook his head slightly. "I didn't come for this," he said. Jonah's expression softened. "No," he agreed. "You didn't." His gaze shifted to Rook. But he did. Rook stood still, unmoving, but present, always present. Caleb looked at the dog, then back at Jonah. What was he protecting? Caleb asked. Jonah exhaled slowly. Not something, he said. Someone. Mara leaned in slightly. Who? Jonah's eyes closed briefly, then opened again. Anyone who got lost, he said. Anyone who needed a way back. He glanced around the bunker. This wasn't just a system, he added. It was a promise. Caleb felt that word settle, not like information, like weight. Jonah's breathing grew uneven again. We need to get you out of here, Mara said firmly. Jonah gave a faint shake of his head. Not yet, he whispered. Caleb frowned. Why not? Jonah's eyes flicked toward the forest above. Because if we leave now, he said, voice barely steady, then no one's left to keep it going. Silence fell again. This time, different, heavier. Caleb looked at Mara, then at Rook, then back at Jonah, and something inside him shifted. Not a decision. Not yet. But close. Very close. The forest didn't feel the same on the way back. It wasn't darker. It wasn't louder. But it watched. Caleb felt it in the way the air pressed closer against his skin, in the way the silence no longer felt empty but occupied. Something had shifted, not in the forest itself, but in how he moved through it. He wasn't passing through anymore. He was part of it. Mara walked beside him, steady and alert, her eyes scanning ahead while her hand stayed near the radio clipped to her jacket. She didn't speak much now. Whatever this had become, it had gone beyond curiosity for her too. Behind them, Jonah remained in the bunker, alive but fragile. Not abandoned. Waiting. Caleb glanced at Rook. The dog moved slightly ahead, shoulders low, steps precise. His ears shifted constantly, catching things Caleb couldn't hear yet. His presence was no longer just guidance. It was direction. They reached the edge of the clearing just as the sound broke through the trees. Engines, low, distant, but unmistakable. Mara froze first, then Caleb. That's not local traffic, she said. Caleb nodded faintly. No. The sound grew louder. Vehicles. More than one. Rook stopped. His body shifted, this time not in recognition, not in memory, in warning. Caleb's eyes narrowed. Company, he muttered. Through the trees, movement appeared. Dark shapes cutting through the light. Men. 3 of them at first, stepping into the clearing with the quiet confidence of people who believed they had control over the space they occupied. Then a 4th. He walked slower than the others. Measured. Intentional. Victor Hale. 48, tall, composed, his posture straight without stiffness. His dark coat, charcoal tailored even for the outdoors, sat clean against the chaos of the forest, untouched by dirt or time. Beneath it, a black high-collar sweater, fitted, deliberate. His boots were high-end leather, barely marked. Even here he looked like he belonged somewhere else. His face was long, angular, the lines sharp but controlled. No beard, clean-shaven. His hair was dark, combed back neatly, touched faintly with silver at the temples. But it was his eyes that held Caleb's attention. Cold, not cruel, just distant. The kind of eyes that had learned to make decisions without needing permission from emotion. Victor stopped a few feet into the clearing. His gaze moved over Caleb, then Mara, then settled on Rook. A pause. Recognition. Interesting, Victor said calmly. His voice was smooth, controlled, not loud. Didn't need to be. I was told there was a dog. Caleb stepped forward slightly. Who are you? He asked. Victor's attention shifted back to him, a faint smile. Polite. Professional. Victor Hale, he said, representing Northridge Extraction. Mara's expression hardened. I knew it, she said under her breath. Victor glanced at her. Forest Service, he noted. That explains the persistence. Mara didn't respond. Caleb stepped in. What are you doing out here? He asked. Victor considered him for a moment, then gestured lightly toward the trees. Evaluating, he said. This land has potential, untapped resources, infrastructure opportunities. Caleb's jaw tightened. This isn't your land. Victor tilted his head slightly. Everything becomes someone's land eventually, he replied. Not aggressive, just factual. Caleb took a step closer. And what happens to the people out here? Victor's gaze sharpened. They stop getting lost, he said. A beat. Then, they stop dying. Mara let out a short breath. That's not what this is about, she said. Victor looked at her again. No, he agreed. It's about control. He turned back to Caleb. Do you know how many people disappear in places like this? He asked. Caleb didn't answer. Victor continued anyway. I do. A pause. I lost someone here. That shifted something. Not in the air, in Caleb. Victor's voice didn't change. Still calm, still measured. They weren't careless, he said. They weren't weak. They just didn't make it back. He looked toward the forest. And no one could tell me why. Silence stretched between them. Then Victor's gaze returned. So yes, he said quietly. I believe this place needs to be controlled. Caleb held his stare. And I believe you're wrong. Victor nodded once. I expected that. Behind him, one of the men shifted slightly, scanning the area. The tension in the clearing thickened. Rook moved. Not forward, not back. He stepped slightly to the side, and then he was gone. Caleb's head snapped toward where the dog had been. Rook! Nothing. No movement. No sound. Just forest. Mara's voice dropped. That's not good. Caleb didn't respond. His focus sharpened instantly. Stay here, he said. Then he moved. Fast, into the trees. The forest swallowed him quickly. Branches brushed against his jacket as he pushed through, eyes scanning, ears straining for anything. A sound, faint. Movement. He adjusted his direction without thinking. Tracking. Not consciously. Instinct. He broke into a small clearing and stopped. There. The ground. Disturbed. Familiar. The same place from before. The collar. Rook stood beside it. Still. Caleb slowed, approached carefully. Hey, he said quietly. Rook didn't move. Didn't look at him. The dog's gaze stayed fixed on the collar, on the memory beneath it. Caleb crouched beside him. For a moment, he didn't speak, didn't think. Just stayed. Then, he exhaled. A long breath that felt like it had been waiting years to leave. I stopped going back, he said. His voice was low, unsteady in a way it hadn't been before. Because no one came back for me. The words hung in the air, heavy, real. Rook shifted, just slightly, then stepped closer, and gently rested his head against Caleb's hand. No urgency, no demand, just presence. Caleb's fingers curled slightly into the dog's fur. Rough, warm, alive. No judgment, no expectation. Just there. Caleb closed his eyes for a second, then opened them again. Different, clearer. He looked at the collar, then at the forest, then back at Rook. Yeah, he said quietly. I get it now. He stood slowly. The hesitation was gone, not replaced by anger, by choice. He looked down at the dog. We're not leaving. Rook stepped back, not leading, not pulling, just aligned. Caleb turned and walked back toward the clearing. Victor was still there, exactly where he had been, as if nothing had changed. But Caleb had. He stepped forward, stopping a few feet away. Victor studied him. Something in his expression shifted. Not surprise, recognition. "You've made a decision," Victor said. Caleb nodded once. "Yeah." Victor's gaze flicked briefly toward the forest, then back. "And you're willing to stand by it?" Caleb met his eyes. "I already am." A long pause. Then Victor exhaled quietly. "Then we're on opposite sides," he said. Not a threat, a statement. Caleb didn't move. "Looks that way." The wind shifted through the clearing, carrying something with it. Not tension, not fear, something else. Finality. For the first time in years, Caleb didn't step back, didn't hesitate, didn't leave. He stayed. The forest did not celebrate. It did not cheer or shift or announce that something had been saved. It simply continued. Wind moved through the trees the same way it always had, soft, steady, carrying the quiet rhythm of something older than any man who tried to claim it. But Caleb felt the difference, not in the forest, in himself. Victor Hale did not return the next day, or the day after. The machines never came. The men didn't push deeper. No markers appeared, no fences followed. He hadn't been defeated. That much was clear. Men like Victor didn't walk away because they lost. They walked away when something changed the calculation. Caleb didn't ask what that something was. He didn't need to. The cabin began to breathe again. Not all at once, not in some dramatic transformation. Slowly, deliberately. Caleb repaired the window first, the same one he had noticed on his first day. He worked without rushing, hands steady, movements precise. The wood fit into place like it had been waiting for him to finish what someone else had started. He didn't think about it too much, didn't analyze it. He just worked. The roof came next, then the door, then the smaller things. The things most people wouldn't notice. Loose hinges, a cracked beam, the kind of details that didn't change how a place looked, but changed how it held together. Mara stayed, not because she had to, because she chose to. She moved through the cabin with the quiet familiarity of someone who understood spaces like this. How they functioned, how they failed, how they endured. She organized what needed organizing, checked the supply lines, mapped what Caleb hadn't yet seen. Some mornings, she would stand outside with a cup of coffee in her hands, watching the forest as if it might speak first. "Feels different," she said once. Caleb glanced at her from where he worked. "How?" Mara shrugged slightly. "Less unfinished?" Caleb nodded. He understood that. Rook never asked for anything. He moved through the space like a shadow that had decided to stay. Most nights, he lay near the fireplace, body stretched along the wooden floor, head resting just enough to see both the door and the window. Not guarding, not exactly, just present. Caleb would sometimes sit nearby, leaning back against the wall, saying nothing. Not because he didn't have anything to say, because he didn't need to. The silence here wasn't empty. It held. Jonah recovered slowly. The first time Caleb helped him back to the cabin, the older man barely had the strength to stand on his own. But there was something stubborn in him. Something that refused to let the years win too easily. His movements were slow, but deliberate. His eyes, though tired, were clear. "You fixed the place up," Jonah said one afternoon, his voice still rough but stronger than before. Caleb shrugged lightly. "Needed it." Jonah nodded, then glanced at Rook. "No," he said quietly. He needed it. Caleb didn't argue. Days passed, then weeks. The work didn't stop. It shifted. From repair to purpose. The maps in the bunker came back into use. Routes were walked again. Markers were checked, replaced, corrected. Caleb moved through the forest now with a different awareness. Not as someone passing through, as someone responsible. Rook remained at his side, always. But something had changed in the dog, too. Subtle. Barely noticeable at first. His steps were just a fraction slower. His pauses just a little longer. The way he looked at the trees, like he was remembering, not searching. Caleb noticed. He didn't say anything. Not yet. One morning, before the sun had fully risen, Caleb stepped outside. And Rook wasn't there. No sound. No movement. Just absence. Caleb's body reacted before his mind did. He scanned the clearing, nothing. No tracks, no sign. "Mara," he called quietly. She stepped out moments later, already alert. "What is it?" "Rook's gone." She didn't ask how, didn't question it. She just nodded once. "Which way?" Caleb paused. Closed his eyes for half a second, then pointed. "Forest line." They moved immediately. Not running, not panicked, focused. Caleb followed the path instinctively. Not marked this time, not guided by signs or symbols. Something else. Something quieter. Familiar. They moved for several minutes before Caleb slowed, then stopped. There. A clearing. Small, almost hidden. And in the center, Rook. The dog stood still, facing away from them. The morning light touched his coat, soft and pale. He didn't turn when they approached, didn't react. He simply stood there, waiting. Caleb stepped forward slowly. "Hey," he said quietly. Rook didn't move. Caleb reached him, then saw it. The harness. Gone. The old patch. Gone. Nothing marked him now. No name, no duty, no role. Just a dog. Caleb's chest tightened slightly. "You took it off," he murmured. Not a question. An understanding. Rook finally turned his head. Looked at him. The same eyes. The same depth. But something in them had shifted. Not focus. Peace. Caleb swallowed. "You done?" he asked quietly. Rook stepped closer, not fast, not urgent. Just enough. Then stopped. Close enough that Caleb could reach him. But didn't. Caleb exhaled slowly, a breath that carried something final in it. "You didn't come back to stay," he said. His voice was steady, but softer than before. "You came back to make sure I would." Rook didn't respond. Didn't need to. He turned, walked past Caleb, not toward the cabin, not toward Mara, toward the forest. Deeper. Caleb didn't follow, didn't call out, didn't move. Mara stepped up beside him. "You're just going to let him go?" she asked quietly. Caleb watched the trees where the dog had disappeared. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "Yeah," he said. Not heavy, not broken, just true. Mara studied him. "You're not worried?" Caleb shook his head slightly. "No." A pause, then, "He was never lost?" The wind moved through the clearing again, soft, steady, like a breath. Caleb turned, walked back toward the cabin, not looking back. Not because he didn't care, because he didn't need to. That night, the fire burned low in the hearth. Mara sat at the table, a cup of coffee in her hands. Jonah rested in the chair near the window, eyes half closed, but listening to everything. Caleb sat on the floor, back against the wall. The silence settled around them. Not empty, not waiting, complete. Outside, the forest moved as it always had, unchanged, endless. And somewhere within it, a dog walked without a harness, without a name, without a mission. Or maybe, for the first time, with none left to carry. Sometimes miracles don't arrive as light in the sky or voices from above. Sometimes they walk beside us quietly, on four legs, with steady eyes and a heart that refuses to give up on us. Maybe God doesn't always change our path. Maybe He sends someone or something to walk it with us, until we remember who we were meant to be. In our everyday lives, we all face moments where we feel lost, forgotten, or left behind. But this story is a reminder that you are never truly alone. Even in your darkest moments, there is guidance, there is purpose, and there is a quiet kind of love that refuses to leave you. If this story touched your heart, take a moment to share it with someone who might need hope today. Leave a comment and tell us where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. And if you believe in stories of loyalty, redemption, and second chances, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next journey. May God watch over you, protect your path, and bring light into your life when you need it most.